Before diving into this incredible story, remember to subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications. Here, every story has something to say, and you won't want to miss a single one. The rain fell in fine, icy drops on the glistening pavement, transforming each reflection into trembling flashes of light. Hurried passers-by made their way through the crowd, oblivious to almost everything except what they deemed important. On the corner, a girl of about 10, her clothes torn and caked in mud, held a worn cardboard box in which a few meager coins clinked faintly. Her eyes, a deep, bright black, seemed to carry the weight of the world, but also a determination unusual for her age. A few meters away, a man in a tailored suit, clearly a billionaire, hurriedly got out of his imposing limousine. His face, drawn by the stress of a business day, tightened when he noticed the scene. His daughter, sitting in her stroller, paralyzed since the accident 6 months earlier, was staring fixedly at the little beggar girl. The little girl advanced slowly, almost as if each step were calculated, and raised her trembling hands toward the paralyzed child. Her voice, surprisingly firm for her age, cut through the noise of the city. "Sir, I can make your daughter walk again." An eerie silence fell. The honking horns, the hurried footsteps, the conversations, everything seemed to vanish. The billionaire remained frozen, unable to blink, unable to breathe normally. He watched the little black girl, a stranger who, with a few simple words, had just destabilized his carefully ordered world. The rain continued to fall, but at that precise moment, everything seemed to stop around him. One question burned in his mind: could she really, or was it just a crazy hope? The billionaire, still frozen, watched the little girl approach. Her dirty clothes and tangled hair contrasted sharply with the opulence of his car and impeccable suit. But there was something in her eyes that no wealth, no power, had ever been able to buy: a total, almost supernatural trust. "Sir, I can help your daughter," she repeated, this time gently placing her hand on the stroller. The paralyzed little girl slowly turned her head, her eyes filled with tears, as if she instinctively felt that this stranger could give her back what she had lost. The billionaire felt his heart sink. The doctors had told him the paralysis was permanent, that all hope was lost. And yet, something in the little girl's demeanor shattered all his certainties. How can you say that?" he stammered, his voice trembling, betraying his surprise and skepticism. The little girl gave a slight smile, confident yet humble. "I know things that others don't. I can make her walk again." The billionaire took a deep breath. His hands tightened on the stroller. He hesitated, torn between doubt and hope. His advisors, his doctors, his entire life as a businessman had taught him to ignore miracles and rely solely on facts. But something about this little girl defied all laws of logic. "Okay," he finally said, his voice almost inaudible. "Show me." A radiant smile lit up the little beggar woman's face. She leaned gently over the paralyzed girl and began to murmur inaudible, yet strangely soothing words. A subtle warmth emanated from her hands, and for the first time in months, the little girl in the stroller moved her feet slightly. The billionaire's eyes widened. Tears welled up in his eyes. He had never seen anything like it. In the street, the rain continued to fall, but for him, the world had just changed in a fraction of a second. He suddenly understood that his life, and that of his daughter, would never be the same again. The billionaire couldn't believe it. His eyes were fixed on the stroller as if he were watching a waking dream. The paralyzed little girl had moved her feet. A spark of hope burned in his eyes for the first time in months. The little black girl, humble but determined, gently placed her hands on the child's legs. "Don't be afraid, concentrate," she murmured. Her words had an almost magical, soothing rhythm, and the silence around them seemed to deepen, as if the city itself were holding its breath. And then, a miracle happened. A small, almost imperceptible movement made the stroller tremble. The paralyzed girl tried a second movement, and this time, her feet touched the ground. She moved them, slowly at first, then with more confidence. The billionaire felt a lump form in his throat. Tears began to flow involuntarily. Passers-by stopped to watch the scene, stunned. No one had ever witnessed anything like it, a poor child, her clothes in tatters, giving life back to another child in a simple yet incredible act. How do you do that?" asked the billionaire, his voice trembling, almost pleading. The little girl turned her bright, dark eyes towards him. "I know how to listen to people's hearts. And your daughter, her heart wants to walk. You just have to help her remember." Encouraged by this mysterious presence, the paralyzed child took a small step. Then a second. Then, before the billionaire's astonished eyes, she stood up completely. Her legs, long immobile, finally bore her weight. She staggered slightly, then walked towards her mother, who had come running, overcome with emotion. The billionaire, frozen for a few moments, finally approached. He took the little black girl in his arms. "I don't know how to thank you," he murmured, tears streaming down his cheeks. The little girl shook her head gently. "You don't need to thank me. But if you want, you can help me too." The billionaire looked at her in astonishment. He then understood that this encounter was no coincidence. His daughter had just regained her ability to walk, but her life was about to be transformed, and not just for her. The billionaire escorted his daughter back inside the house, still trembling with emotion. But his mind was preoccupied with the little beggar girl. Who was she? How could she perform such a miracle? And above all, why was she alone in the street, in the rain, when she seemed so special? He turned to her, who was waiting for him on the sidewalk, silent but dignified. "What's your name?" he finally asked. The little girl lowered her eyes for a few seconds before replying, "My name is Amara." The billionaire took a step towards her. "Amara, you have no one to help you? Your parents?" The little girl shook her head, a shadow of sadness crossing her bright eyes. "I live alone. I have no one." These words struck the billionaire like a thunderbolt. He had spent his life protecting his wealth, his name, his family, and yet, he had never seen so much courage and dignity in a single human being. "Amara, if you want, you can come with us. Your life will never be the same again," he said gently, but firmly. Amara looked up at him. Her intense gaze betrayed a mixture of mistrust and hope. I don't know if I can. I don't want to bother you." The billionaire smiled, almost amused by his caution. "You'll never be a bother. And believe me, you could change a lot of things in my life." She hesitated for another second, then, as if she sensed a decision had to be made, she slowly nodded. "Okay. I'll come." At that moment, the billionaire knew he had just met someone exceptional. He already sensed that this little girl, homeless yet so powerful, was going to change his life and that of his family forever. On returning home, he found himself reflecting on his own existence, his priorities, his certainties, his ambitions. Everything suddenly seemed trivial in the face of this life force that Amara had just brought into his home. And he understood, for the first time, that he no longer just wanted to protect his daughter, he wanted to protect Amara, and everything she represented. The following days were a mixture of wonder and disbelief for the billionaire. Amara adapted quickly to the luxurious house, but she never seemed impressed by the gold, the cars, or the lavish rooms. Her dark eyes always remained focused on what mattered most, helping and understanding those around her. The first morning, as the billionaire's daughter got out of bed to walk unaided for the first time since the accident, Amara stood beside her, placing her hands on her shoulders to guide her. The little girl laughed as she stumbled, but this time, the fear was gone. The billionaire, witnessing the scene, felt his heart swell with a mixture of pride and admiration. Then he began to observe something even more astonishing. Amara seemed to sense the deep emotions of those around her. When a nervous and intimidated household employee entered, she placed her hand on his arm and murmured a few words. The man, who had always trembled in the presence of the billionaire, straightened up, inspired by a newfound confidence. "How do you do that?" asked the billionaire, incredulous. Amara shrugged modestly. "I don't do anything magical. I just understand what others are feeling. And sometimes, all it takes is showing them that they can get back up." Each day, she discovered new abilities, calming fear, restoring hope, soothing physical and emotional pain. The billionaire's paralyzed daughter now walked with confidence, and the businessman understood that her presence was changing everything around her. But behind this extraordinary gift, Amara also carried a heavy burden. At night, when the house was silent, she stayed awake, gazing at the stars through the window. She would think back to her life on the streets, her loneliness, and the hardships she had endured. And yet, she never let resentment or fear control her actions. Seeing her like this, the billionaire understood that Amara was not just a child with surprising abilities, she was a mirror of what life could offer when you looked at it with your heart. He then realized that this encounter was not a simple coincidence. Amara had come to change her daughter, but also to profoundly transform her own life, her view of others and of what really matters. A few weeks had passed since Amara's arrival at the house. The billionaire's daughter walked confidently, smiling and full of life, but the biggest change was actually taking place in her father's mind and heart. The billionaire, once obsessed with his business, profits, and image, was beginning to see the world differently. Endless meetings and pressing financial decisions now seemed trivial compared to the simple joy the little girl brought to his home. One morning, as he watched Amara help her daughter get dressed, he felt a surge of emotion rising within him. He realized that he had always lived according to rules he believed to be right, but which had distanced him from life's true priorities: compassion, care, and love. Amara, perceptive as always, placed her hand on his arm and said softly, "You never knew you could be even better, but you can be now." These words deeply affected the billionaire. He reflected on his relationship with his family, on the distance he had always maintained with his daughter and even with his wife before their separation. He understood that his wealth had never replaced his need for love and companionship. That same week, an unexpected incident occurred. One of the billionaire's former partners arrived to negotiate a risky and aggressive contract, threatening to ruin part of his business if his terms weren't accepted. Ordinarily, the billionaire would have given in or responded coldly. But Amara, always at his side, placed his hands on his shoulders and whispered, "Fear does not belong to you. You can decide with your heart." For the first time, he chose compassion and honesty over force or purely financial strategy. He proposed a compromise that protected his interests while respecting the other party. The result was unexpected. The partner, touched by this gesture, immediately accepted, astonished by the billionaire's maturity and generosity. It was a pivotal moment. He understood that his encounter with Amara was not only changing his daughter, but also making him more human. And for the first time in years, he felt that his life finally had real meaning, beyond money and power. Amara, sitting in a corner of the room, watched him with a slight smile. She knew that her work was only just beginning, but already, she had planted the first seed of profound change. Despite her new, safe, and warm environment, Amara still carried the scars of her life on the streets. At night, she relived the moments of hunger and cold, and all those who had ignored or rejected her. Each memory was a silent weight that no one, not even the billionaire, could yet completely ease. One evening, while she was helping the billionaire's daughter with her homework, her gaze drifted out the window. The sound of rain on the roof seemed to awaken images she had tried to forget. The billionaire, who had been discreetly observing her, approached gently. "Amara, if you want to talk about your past, I'm here." The little girl looked down. Her fingers nervously played with the sleeve of her sweater. "There are things, people, that I've lost," she whispered. "My family. I don't know where they are." The billionaire felt a deep compassion for her. He knew his wealth couldn't replace a family, but he could help her find what had been lost. "Amara, we will find you. Everyone you're looking for, we will find. I promise you." The little girl stared at him in disbelief. Her eyes reflected both hope and fear, the hope of seeing loved ones again, the fear of discovering that they might not be expecting her. But something in the billionaire's firm and sincere voice reassured her. The next day, he set a discreet plan in motion, investigating former children's homes, contacting social services, and searching the streets where she had grown up. Each discovery provided a piece of the puzzle of her past, and each small success strengthened the bond between Amara and the billionaire. For the first time, Amara felt she could allow herself to dream of a different future, one where she would no longer be alone or vulnerable. And the billionaire, seeing her smile after so much suffering, understood that his role as protector now went beyond mere material comfort. He was becoming a true father, not only to his own daughter, but to this exceptional child who had just turned his life upside down. Amara's past remained a shadow, but for the first time, she no longer had to carry it alone. And for the billionaire, each step Amara took toward the light was another step toward a life he had never imagined possible. A few weeks after the search began, Amara and the billionaire stood in the latter's office, surrounded by files and old photos. The clues were finally starting to converge: a former children's home, neighbors who remembered her, and even a notebook where her mother had jotted down some contact information. Amara's heart was pounding. Every piece of information brought her closer to what she had thought was lost forever: her family. Fear and hope mingled in her eyes. "Sir, what if I can't find them?" she asked, her voice trembling. The billionaire placed a comforting hand on her shoulder. "So we will continue to search. But I believe you will find them. And no matter what you find, you will never be alone again." The next day, a new lead took them to a small house on the outskirts of town. Amara immediately recognized the garden she had known as a child. She walked slowly, as if each step risked shattering the fragile hope she had carried for years. The door opened, and a woman with tired but tender eyes appeared. "Amara." Her voice trembled with suppressed tears. The little black girl rushed forward without thinking and threw herself into the woman's arms. Tears streamed down their cheeks, blending past and present in a moment of pure emotion. The billionaire, witnessing this scene, felt an emotion that no amount of wealth could have offered him: the miracle of a family reunited. "It's thanks to you, sir," murmured the mother, looking at the billionaire with gratitude. Amara, still in her mother's arms, turned her head toward him and smiled. That smile contained all the gratitude and affection she had accumulated over the years of solitude. "Thank you for giving me a chance." The billionaire understood at that moment that his life had changed forever, not only because he had helped Amara, but because she had overturned everything he thought he knew about life, family, and love. And in that garden, under the sun that was beginning to break through the clouds, Amara rediscovered what she had thought was lost forever: her mother's love, and now, a new family chosen around her. After the emotional reunion with her mother, Amara settled permanently into the lives of the billionaire and his daughter. But her influence extended far beyond the family home. Every gesture, every word from the little girl seemed to breathe positive change into everything she touched. In the billionaire's office, her presence had become an unexpected source of inspiration. Employees, accustomed to their boss's coldness and strict authority, now noticed that he made decisions with more compassion and fairness. Even the most difficult negotiations were now approached calmly and humanely, thanks to Amara's subtle guidance. One day, when a major investment decision threatened to destabilize several small local businesses, Amara observed the scene. She placed her hand on the billionaire's arm and whispered, "You can protect your business without destroying others." These simple words had an immediate effect. The billionaire proposed a plan that not only secured his interests but also guaranteed the survival of the small businesses involved. The partners, astonished, enthusiastically accepted. The employees, for their part, began to see their boss in a new light: fair, humane, and inspiring. At home, the changes were just as impressive. The billionaire's daughter, now fully active and confident thanks to Amara, brought contagious joy to the whole family. The grateful mother began to actively participate in daily life and support Amara in her schooling and personal development. Amara, for her part, remained humble. She sought neither recognition nor glory, but every smile she provoked, every life she touched, consolidated her place in this world that had long seemed hostile to her. The billionaire, observing this transformation, understood that Amara's arrival had been much more than a miracle for his daughter. She had been the catalyst for a profound metamorphosis in his life, his family, and even in the way he perceived power and money. For the first time, he felt a peace he had never known. Wealth, success, fame, all of it took on a new meaning, because he now understood that true power lay in the ability to transform the lives of others, to give hope, and to show compassion. And in every smile of Amara's, he saw a future where compassion and determination could change the world, one step at a time. A few months later, life finally seemed to have settled down for the billionaire, his daughter, and Amara. But as is often the case, change brings challenges. An unexpected crisis arose. A rumor circulated in the media, insinuating that the billionaire had acquired his fortune through dubious practices. Investors worried, employees were tense, and the scandal-hungry press was closing in on the family home. The billionaire, used to controlling every detail, felt panic rising. He knew this storm could destabilize his empire, but above all, he feared for his daughter and Amara. Amara, calm as always, placed her hand on her arm and said, "You are not alone. We will get through this together." And the truth, it always comes out in the end. His words, simple yet powerful, had a strange effect on the billionaire. The fear that gripped him began to subside in the face of this quiet confidence. He understood that the situation would not be resolved by force or anger, but by wisdom, patience, and compassion. With Amara by his side, he decided to face the media and investors with complete transparency. He organized a public conference, explaining each decision and transaction with honesty and clarity. Amara stayed close to her daughter during this time, reassuring and encouraging everyone simply by being there. The effect was immediate. The billionaire's transparency disarmed the press and critics. Investors regained confidence, and employees recovered their composure. But it wasn't just his wealth or prestige that had saved the day, it was Amara's quiet strength, her ability to calm fears and inspire confidence in those around her. At the end of the day, on his way home, the billionaire paused for a moment in front of Amara. "You changed my life, and you saved my family. I can never thank you enough." Amara smiled gently, without pride. "I only showed you what you already had inside." For the first time, the billionaire realized that true power lay not in money, nor in influence, but in the ability to inspire, protect, and transform the lives of those he loved. And he knew that with Amara by his side, no obstacle was insurmountable. The sun was rising gently over the billionaire's house, illuminating the smiling faces that now filled every room. The billionaire's daughter ran around the garden, laughing loudly, while Amara guided her through her new games. Amara's mother, now living with them, was preparing breakfast, and the billionaire watched them, his heart filled with an emotion that no amount of wealth could buy. Sitting on the terrace, he gazed at Amara and her daughter, two children he had once thought helpless and fragile, who were now the source of his joy and inspiration. He understood that his entire life had changed in an instant, that day when he had seen that little black girl in the rain, alone and determined. Amara, ever humble despite her extraordinary talents, approached him and placed her hand on his. "You have opened your heart, and look at all that has changed." The billionaire smiled, his eyes misting over. "No, you're the one who changed my life. You saved my daughter, you saved my family, and, in a way I never could have imagined, you also saved my heart." The once lonely and vulnerable young black girl had found not only her family, but a home where she was loved and respected. She had transformed the lives of those around her, revealing their humanity and their capacity for change. As the morning breeze gently caressed the garden, the billionaire stood up and embraced Amara, surrounded by his daughter and Amara's mother. For the first time, he felt the fullness of a life rich not in money, but in love, compassion, and hope. And he knew, deep in his being, that this improbable encounter, this miracle in the rain, had created a new life, a life where the strength of the heart surpassed all limits, and where every smile could transform the world around him. In this home now filled with laughter and light, only one truth resonated: sometimes, it only takes one courageous person to turn an entire life upside down, and, by domino effect, change the lives of many others.